friend. Welcome to Exodus chapter 4, day 2. Where are we? Take a guess. We are at Mount Sinai. And when is today's passage taking place? Well, God has just met with the people. He has met with Moses, and he has given Moses all of the rules, all of the regulations that the people need to live as this kingdom of priests, as a holy nation set apart for the Lord, that others, like all the nations, might know Yahweh. So Moses has received these words of the Lord. Words was in our passage today several times, and it just means a brief statement. And the rules are just that. They're rules, they're regulations that God has established. And we talked about these back in book 2. We had those 10 words, what we know to be the 10 commandments. And then there were the rest of the rules that kind of expounded on those 10 laws. So now what? Today is the what question. Well, Moses came, this is verse 3, Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the rules. All right, so I just noted here, wow, Moses is a good mediator. And this means that Moses had to do a good job of listening to Yahweh, listening to the Lord, didn't he? Anybody, what's that game, like the telephone game where you give a message and you pass it on? Things can get lost in translation pretty quickly just because we don't hear clearly or we're not focused. A lot of different reasons. But Moses is a good mediator. He listens well to the Lord. And then I noticed he tells all. He told the people all the words of the Lord and all the rules. Like Moses doesn't miss a beat. So just kudos to Moses. I respect him so much. Why? Why does Moses do this? Why has God given these words and these rules to Moses to give to the people? Well, so that and why, I guess the real question I asked was, why does Moses come and tell the people, right? Because these instructions were for them. These instructions are from God to them, but Moses fulfills this mediator position, right? He's in the middle, so to speak. And another part of the why is, as we've talked about, here is God's invitation to the people of Israel to come serve him, to come be his treasured possession, to come be this kingdom of priests, this holy nation set apart to live and serve Yahweh. All right, so how, and we see it in the very first verse today, verse 3, how do the people respond? I loved this, friends. They responded, Moses records, and all the people answered with one voice. Now, one means single, right? One is the smallest whole number possible. And what do we see here? What does this response with one voice mean? It means that their hearts are united, right? There are no dissenters in this agreement with the Lord. They're all united with one heart and one mind, and they respond verbally with one voice. And this also points to their unity, not just with one another, but their unity with the Lord. They are saying, what do they say? All the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do. All the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do. Now, we will see if they live up to that, right? But I love this response. This is their heart. This is how they want to respond to Yahweh. This is they want to be his treasured possession, this kingdom of priests, this holy nation. And so they take an oath. Really, that's what this is. This is an oath. This is a promise. This is a covenant, as we see in the last verse of today's passage. So I love that. There were some beautiful cross references. Exodus chapter 19:8. We see them respond in the exact same way. That was in book 2 of our Exodus series. We saw them respond. And Deuteronomy 5:27 was another beautiful cross reference as well. All right, so I think we've covered the who, what, where, when, why, and how of this passage. The next thing I noticed as I was studying this morning is Moses himself as the mediator. And I'm not going to take a lot of time with this, but wow, I noticed all that Moses does as the mediator. Did you notice that too? For you grammar buffs out there, we have Moses and the verbs, the things that show what he does. In verse 3, Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord. Verse 4, and Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. I'll just comment on that there's something about writing down these words that offer them permanency, right? And it's a way that they can be reviewed, that the Lord's words can be reviewed, be read again, be listened to again, be passed on to the next generation. So Moses came and told the people. Moses wrote down. Moses rises early in the morning. Moses built an altar. Moses sent young men of the people of Israel. These were the ones who offered the burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to the Lord. Number 6 that I noticed, Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins. Verse 7, Moses took the book of the covenant. What did he do with it? He read it in the hearing of all the people. Here's a formal reading of God's word. And once again, the people respond, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do, and we will be obedient. So again, they are entering into this covenant agreement with the Lord. I kind of got off track with all that Moses does. Verse 8, I see Moses took the blood again. And what did he do this time? He threw it on the people and he spoke these words. Behold, the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. All right, so this was symbolizing that this covenant agreement has it's been done. We've made this agreement. It's like a marriage in a sense. Both have agreed to this. Both sides have agreed to this covenant promise. The Lord and the people of Israel, and it is acknowledged by the blood of the covenant. Now, friends, let me just take a minute. I've spent quite a bit of time just pondering on the blood because to our 21st century sensibilities, to my own 21st century sensibilities, this is just gross. Like, what is this with blood? And it's not easy to put on our 21st century. No, we have on our 21st century glasses. It's not easy for us to put on our ancient Near East glasses and understand the world at this time. Understand exactly what God is asking of the people and what this blood represents. Friends, blood in the Old Testament symbolizes life. Blood is, we know it to be the red fluid that is pumped through the body by the heart. But in the Old Testament, it always symbolizes life. And there were a lot of cross references for this. There's a beautiful passage in Hebrews chapter 9, verses 18 through 20 that talks about this. And I'm going to take time, if you don't mind, I'm going to take time to read this. Here's the author of Hebrews says this: "Therefore, not even the first covenant was inaugurated without blood. For when every commandment of the law had been declared by Moses to all the people, he took the blood of calves and goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled the book itself and all the people, saying, 'This is the blood of the covenant that God commands for you.'" All right, so Moses sprinkles the blood on the book, sprinkles the blood on the people, and we all react like, ugh. But in a sense, friends, here's a visual reminder of life and the abundant life that God in his grace calls the people to. So we have to stop and think about what an offering, an animal offering, represents. And there were two different offerings mentioned here. I don't know if you caught that. We have the burnt offerings and we have the peace offerings. And so I'll read to you what my Bible dictionary, how my Bible dictionary defines a burnt offering. It's a kind of sacrifice that included the acceptable parts of the animal being completely burnt up. It's completely burnt up, meaning that this sacrifice is dedicated in its entirety to the Lord. Now, the peace offering, this was a sacrifice intended for alliance and friendship with God. Anybody want to be a friend of God? Yes, that's what is taking place here. Israel, the people of Israel are wanting to be friends of God. He's saying, look, I want to be your friend, and I want you to be my friend, my treasured possession. So this peace offering is often associated with promises and vows. But this sacrificial worship always involved the slaughtering and cooking of meat. Why? Here's the principle. The principle is based on substitutionary atonement. It really kind of means, for me to live, something must die in my place. For me to live, something must die in my place. And so what does God do here, or what's taking place here in today's passage? Friends, here's a visual reminder. This blood of the covenant is a visual reminder of what? The reality of sin and death. We talked about this yesterday, that there's this separation, right? There was this distinction on who can draw near to God. And clearly there is a separation between a holy God and a sinful people. So here, this blood of the covenant shows the reality of sin and death. It shows the reality of this dead animal and its blood, its life blood being poured out on my behalf. And it also, it definitely shows God's grace in that he allows for an animal to be the substitutionary atonement, to be the substitute for the sinner, to show that he forgives and he accepts, he receives. All right, I hope that kind of makes sense. A lot to ponder. I've spent a lot of time on this lesson. In essence, friends, let's just boil it down to this. What is it we learn about who God is? Oh, he is gracious and merciful. He allows the slain animal to atone, to be a substitute for the sinner. And God receives his people through the blood of the covenant. And I think there's something, I just understanding that the blood symbolizes life, that God is a God of life. He's a God of abundant life. And then, friends, living on this side of the cross, we can understand that God eventually becomes the substitute himself. That's how faithful he is to the oath that he is making with the people of Israel. That one day, through Jesus Christ, the Son of God, he himself will become the substitute. Friends, here's what Jesus had to say in the Last Supper. This is Matthew 26:28. For this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Mark records it this way, Mark 14:24, and Jesus said to them, this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Let's bow down and worship.